Evan Hale had walked into many royal halls on different planets, but none were as silent and cold as the Celestian Royal Hall. The marble floor shone like frozen light, and tall pillars rose toward a ceiling lined with moving starlight patterns. Celestians stood on both sides, dressed in shimmering silver robes that reflected every step he took. They were tall, graceful, and looked almost carved from crystal. Humans were shorter, rougher, and far less elegant in their eyes. Evan could feel hundreds of eyes watching him, judging him, weighing his worth before he even spoke. He had been warned before he came. The Celestian Empire did not respect humans. They respected technology, territory, and silence. They believed their beauty and long history placed them above every race that joined the galactic community. But even knowing all that, Evan had expected at least a little courtesy. He wasn't here to beg. He wasn't here to demand. He was here to help fix a crisis that could destroy half their star systems. He stopped a few steps from the throne platform. There she was, Queen Arya Valen, only 26 years old, but known across 7 systems for her strong rule, flawless diplomacy, and unmatched Celestian pride. Her long silver hair almost floated behind her like it moved with its own breeze. Her violet eyes shone with a soft glow, and her face was calm, emotionless, unreadable. Celestians admired her. Other species feared her. To Evan, she was simply another leader facing a disaster she hoped to ignore. He waited for her to acknowledge him. She didn't, not even a small nod. The hall felt even heavier. But Evan stayed relaxed, his breathing steady, his mind clear. He wasn't intimidated. He had met warlords, pirates, and tyrants before. He had seen starships exploding around him while repairing stabilizers mid-battle. After all that, a cold queen staring past him wasn't going to shake him. A tall advisor stepped forward and announced in a proud voice, "Human envoy Evan Hale, representative of Terra and bearer of the energy stabilization proposal." Arya lifted her eyes slightly, finally glancing at him. She didn't smile. She didn't greet him. Her expression stayed unreadable, as she leaned her cheek against her hand in a bored manner. "So this is the human?" she asked. The advisor nodded. "Yes, Your Majesty." Her gaze drifted over Evan like he was a tool left on the floor. "He looks ordinary." A quiet wave of whispers spread through the hall. Celestians didn't whisper loudly. Their whispers were sharp and controlled, like soft blades. Evan heard them clearly. Too small. Too plain. Humans are always like this. Why did we even summon one? Evan ignored them with ease. He came here expecting this. Humans were considered young in the galactic stage. Celestians saw themselves as stars, and humans as sparks. But he knew something the court didn't know. Sometimes, a spark could burn brighter than a star. He tried to speak. "Your Majesty, thank you for granting." She cut him off instantly with a wave of her fingers. "Do not waste time with unnecessary words. Humans talk too much. Show me what your proposal offers, if it offers anything at all." The room stiffened. Even her advisors seemed startled by how sharply she dismissed him. Evan paused, then calmly set the data module on a small stand, letting a hologram rise. Blue light shaped into a diagram of an unstable star grid, exactly the crisis threatening their empire. "This," he said, "is the structure of your collapsing energy grid. My team developed a stabilizer design that can delay collapse and give your engineers time to rebuild." One of the council members leaned forward, impressed. Another whispered that such technology could save millions. But Arya didn't react. She simply studied Evan with the same cold expression. "And what," she asked softly, "does the human want in return?" Evan blinked once. "Nothing." The court burst into whispers again. The queen didn't whisper, she simply narrowed her eyes. "Nothing?" she repeated. "Humans always want something. Access, trade, respect." Her gaze hardened. "If you expect me to treat Terra as an equal world, you will be disappointed." Evan didn't smile. He didn't frown. He didn't react at all. He simply stood there, steady and calm. Arya noticed that. Her expression shifted slightly. as if she was waiting for him to defend himself or become angry. Instead, he looked at the hologram again. "The grid will collapse within 6 months. Maybe less," he said. "I'm offering help because no species deserves to lose billions to a preventable disaster." His voice wasn't dramatic, it wasn't emotional. It was simple, direct, and sincere. But the Queen tilted her head slightly and said, "Humans are too sentimental. You mistake weakness for kindness." The words echoed through the chamber. For the first time, Evan understood something crystal clear. She didn't just disrespect humans. She didn't want their help. She wanted to show the entire court that Celestians didn't need humans, even if the galaxy was crumbling around them. Evan stepped back slowly. He looked at the hologram one last time, then at the Queen, who refused to meet him halfway. She waited for him to speak, maybe to argue, maybe to justify himself, maybe to beg for her attention. He did none of that. Evan simply powered off the hologram, picked up the device, and turned around. Then, without a single word, he walked away from the throne, from the hall, from the empire that needed help more than it admitted. The silence he left behind was heavier than any speech. The long hall remained frozen as hundreds of Celestians stared in disbelief. No one had ever walked away from the Queen like that. No one had ever turned their back on her decisions without permission. Even her advisors looked stunned. Queen Arya herself sat straighter, confused for the first time. She had expected anger or apology. She had expected him to ask for reconsideration. But he did nothing except leave. Something unfamiliar tightened in her chest, a small, sharp feeling she had never experienced. Regret. She watched his form disappear through the large doors, the sound of his footsteps fading. "Your Majesty," an advisor said carefully. "He carries technology we desperately need. Perhaps we should—" "No," she snapped too quickly. Then realized her own voice sounded uncertain. She looked away from the door and pressed her lips together. "He should have shown the respect due to this court." "Respect?" another advisor whispered. "He offered help freely." "That is rare." Arya didn't reply. She didn't know how to reply. Later that day, she sat alone in her private chamber with a stack of reports floating in holographic patterns. The failing star grid flashed red on one of the screens, but she kept seeing something else instead. The human's calm eyes as he walked away. Not angry, not afraid, not defeated, just done. She had dismissed countless envoys in her life. None of them ever left like that. Even the proudest leaders hesitated under her gaze. But Evan didn't. He treated her differently, not as a ruler who could crush him, but as someone who simply wasn't worth arguing with. That thought disturbed her more than she expected. For the first time, she wondered if she had made a mistake, if she had misjudged not only him, but maybe all humans. She recalled the way he stood, relaxed yet steady, confident yet respectful, strong yet silent. No arrogance, no fear, no flattery, just a quiet certainty she couldn't understand. She ordered her staff to bring reports about Terra's recent achievements. They hesitated, confused, but obeyed. Soon, her screens filled with information she had ignored for years: human exploration missions, engineering advancements, rescue operations across neutral space, the stabilizer Evan designed that had saved smaller colonies before. As she read, she felt something else rise slowly inside her: admiration. She didn't want to feel it. She tried to ignore it. But it was there, quietly growing. Why had he left so easily? Why didn't he fight for her approval like others? Why did his silence feel heavier than the court's judgment? That night, she stood at her balcony, watching the twin moons rise. Their soft glow filled the sky, and her palace stood quiet around her. But her mind kept returning to one thing: a human walking away without waiting for her permission. A queen used to power suddenly realized she had lost something important, not politically, not strategically, but personally. She didn't know yet that this moment was the beginning of a change in her empire. She didn't know that Evan's absence would echo louder than his presence. All she knew was that for the first time in her young but powerful reign, she wished she had spoken to the human with a little more respect, and she wished, quietly and secretly, that he might one day look back at her again. Queen Arya tried to return to her normal routine after the human envoy walked out. But something inside her refused to settle. She sat through council meetings, but she found herself drifting, her thoughts circling back to the same moment again and again, the sound of Evan Hale's footsteps as he left her hall without permission, without fear, without a single word. His silence felt louder than any accusation she had ever heard. It bothered her in a way she didn't understand. She had been raised to believe Celestians were the peak of civilization. No one walked away from their queen. No one refused their summons. No one offered help without expecting rewards. But that human had done all three. He had arrived calmly, shown real concern for her empire, and then left with the same calmness when she insulted him. It made no sense. She tried to focus on the crisis reports. Energy rings in outer systems were failing faster than expected. A colony in Sector 9 had already been evacuated because the local star grid became unstable. Her advisors kept warning her that the collapse could spread. Some urged her to contact the human immediately. Others believed they could handle things without help. Arya listened to both sides. But her mind wasn't on the debate. It lingered on something else. Why didn't he respond? Why didn't he argue? Why didn't he look hurt? Why didn't he even pause? That quiet confidence irritated her more than she liked to admit. By evening, she found herself staring at the empty throne hall, remembering the exact moment he met her gaze. He had no sparkle of fear, no trace of desperation, no sign of annoyance. He looked like someone who weighed her words, found them unnecessary, and simply refused to stay near them. Arya exhaled slowly. For a queen who had been praised all her life, her thoughts felt strangely heavy. She didn't regret many decisions in her rule, but she felt a small sting of regret now. A strange emotion she barely recognized. It felt like an opportunity slipping through her fingers. The next day, she ordered her staff to locate Evan Hale and request a second audience. She waited only an hour before the messenger returned. Bowing deeply, "Your Majesty." The human envoy declined. Arya's eyes lifted sharply. "Declined?" "Yes, Your Majesty." His exact message was, "I am unavailable for Celestian audiences at this time." Log discreeter. His exact message was "Fine later, Sopter." The court gasped softly. Arya felt something cold settle in her chest. No one denied her a meeting. Even hostile species accepted an audience out of formality. But he refused politely, calmly, but firmly. "Send another request," she said. Another request was sent. It was declined again. The third request received a different response. Perhaps in the future. Arya's fingers tightened around the armrest of her throne. She didn't show anger, but she felt a strange pressure inside her. The human didn't fear her, didn't obey her, and now didn't even consider her a priority. Her council noticed her changing expression. One advisor carefully suggested, "Your Majesty, perhaps a more formal apology would—" "I am not apologizing to a human," she said too quickly, too sharply. The room went still. Arya felt her own words echo back at her. Was this pride speaking? Or habit? Or fear that a single apology might look like weakness? But inside, something whispered a different truth. She wasn't angry that he refused. She was bothered that she wanted him to return. Still, she forced herself to focus on the crisis. Reports kept coming in. Another stabilizer ring flickered dangerously. A district of over 40,000 was evacuated. Engineers tried to fix the grid but had no solution. Some Celestian scientists whispered that Evan's design might be the only answer. Arya tried to ignore the growing panic, but she knew the truth. Her empire was walking towards slow destruction, and she had turned away the man who had offered a solution. She couldn't sit still. That night, she paced her balcony, looking up at the stars. Each one represented a Celestian system. Each one she was sworn to protect. Her heart tightened as she thought of the human's calm voice describing the collapse. He had not been wrong. He had not exaggerated. He had spoken with a sincerity she did not value in the moment. Why did he come offering help with nothing in return? No species behaved like that. Everyone wanted something: alliances, credits, influence, but he had only wanted to prevent suffering. Arya felt a soft wind run across her hair. She closed her eyes. She could feel her own heartbeat slow down. Pride had always guided her decisions, but now something else stirred inside her, a quiet understanding that maybe she had been wrong. 2 days later, a Celestian patrol reported sighting Evan Hale on a neutral space station not far from their borders. Arya pressed her lips together, thinking, humans rarely traveled alone, unless they felt unwelcome. The fact that he moved away from Celestian territory told her everything she needed to know. She made a decision. Prepare a message, she told her communication officer. Offer him partnership, equal standing, and freedom to operate within our systems. The officer frowned slightly. Equal standing? With humans? Arya hesitated only for a moment. Yes, the message was sent. Hours passed. No reply. Arya's chest felt heavy in a way she didn't understand. She waited the entire night, staring at the glowing screen for an answer that never came. The next morning, she received news that shocked her. Evan Hale had accepted invitations from 3 other species. They respected him. They welcomed him. They wanted his technology. He was already helping stabilize smaller colonies outside her empire. Arya felt something sharp and unwelcome inside her. It wasn't jealousy. It wasn't anger. It was a strange mix of admiration and fear that she had pushed away someone valuable not because he was useful, but because he was different. Her advisors brought reports of Evan's progress. He worked with speed, discipline, and care. He treated all species equally. He put himself in danger to fix unstable reactors. He gained trust wherever he went. Stories about him started spreading. A human who didn't bow. A human who walked away from Celestian arrogance. A human who helped countless others without asking for reward. Arya found herself reading every report, even when she didn't need to. She began wondering what he was doing at that moment. Was he safe? Was he frustrated? Did he think Celestians were hopeless? Did he think she was unworthy of trust? Her mind wandered far too often. She would sit in important meetings and suddenly hear Evan's calm voice again, telling her about the danger. She would find herself remembering the way he stood quiet, steady, firm. She noticed something she had missed earlier. Evan Hale had not come to make himself important. He had come because he cared something she had dismissed too easily. As days passed, her empire grew more unstable. Emergency shelters filled with worried families. Star grids flickered like dying lanterns. She felt her responsibility growing heavier. She remembered Evan's diagram and realized she had ignored the only solution. One night, exhausted and restless, she walked into the empty throne hall. She looked at the place where he had stood. She imagined him there again, calmly explaining what needed to be done. She felt her chest tighten with regret so deep she couldn't hide it anymore. She whispered into the silence. Why did I treat him that way? She slowly sat on the cold steps in front of the throne, a place no queen ever sat. She touched the smooth floor lightly. I should have listened, she said to herself. I should have respected him. It wasn't just his technology she regretted losing. It was him. The human who spoke with honesty. The human who didn't fear her. The human who walked away. Arya realized she wanted to meet him again, not as a queen demanding respect, but as a leader seeking understanding. She wanted to apologize, even though she had never apologized to anyone outside her empire. But before she could decide what to do next, a sudden alarm pierced the hall. The main star grid in the capital system was failing. Engineers were evacuating. Huge districts went dark. Panic spread like fire. Arya felt the ground under her shift. The reports she feared were now real. A disaster was coming. And her empire couldn't stop it. As she ran toward the command center, one thought pushed through everything else. The only person who could help them now was the same human she had pushed away. She whispered to herself, breathless and afraid, I need him, not her empire, not her advisors, not her throne. She needed him, and she finally understood that needing someone did not make her weak, it made her honest. The emergency lights inside the Celestian command center flashed red, reflecting across Queen Arya's worried face as she hurried in. Advisors, engineers, and officers rushed around her, speaking in tense voices. The star grid supporting the capital system was failing faster than anyone predicted. Arya felt a cold weight press against her chest as she listened to the reports. Energy output dropping by another 5%, one engineer shouted. Stabilizer rings 3 and 4 are collapsing, another added urgently. If we do not slow the collapse, the capital sector will lose power within hours, a senior commander said, with fear in his voice. Arya took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. But she already knew the truth. This was exactly what Evan Hale had warned her about. She had dismissed him, insulted him, and now her empire was suffering because of her pride. Prepare all emergency units, she ordered softly. Evacuate the lower districts. 2. Her council looked at her with worry. A Celestian evacuation was rare, almost unthinkable. But they had no choice. The energy grid failure could spread across entire planets. As the team moved quickly, Arya stepped away and stared at the massive hologram of the collapsing grid. She could see the cracks forming in the structure. She felt like she was watching her own mistakes appear one by one, becoming impossible to ignore. Her decision came suddenly, like a spark lighting in darkness. Prepare my ship, she said. The room went silent. A guard stepped forward carefully. Your Majesty, where are you going? Arya looked at the hologram of the grid for a long moment, then finally spoke. I am going to find Evan Hale. Some gasped. Others exchanged uncertain looks. A queen never traveled alone. A queen never left in times of crisis. A queen never sought help from someone she had dismissed. But Arya did not care about rules anymore. She cared about saving lives. She cared about fixing her biggest mistake. Her ship left the palace within the hour. She sat in the quiet cabin, watching stars streak past her. She tried to prepare herself for what she would say, but the words felt heavy. How did a queen apologize to someone she insulted? How did she ask for help when she had acted as if she did not need any? How did she face a human who had already walked away from her? She closed her eyes and pressed her hand against her heart. She didn't know what he would say. She didn't know if he would even listen. But she had to try. The neutral space station came into view, a large floating ring of metal and lights, surrounded by small transport ships. When Arya stepped out of her vessel, everyone around her froze. Celestian royalty had never visited this station before. Workers bowed quickly. Pilots stared. Some looked afraid. Others confused. Arya ignored the attention. There was only one person she came for. A station officer approached her nervously. Your Majesty, we were not expecting. I am looking for the human engineer Evan Hale, she said in a calm but firm voice. Where is he? Where is he? The officer swallowed hard and pointed toward an engineering bay on the lower level. Arya walked quickly, her steps echoing across the metal floor. She reached the doorway and paused. Inside, she saw Evan standing at a workbench, holding a damaged conduit. His sleeves were rolled up, and his face was marked with grease from the earlier repairs he'd been doing. 2 alien workers stood beside him, asking questions. Evan was explaining something with patience and clarity, showing them how to stabilize a part of the energy ring. Arya stood quietly, watching him for a moment. He looked nothing like the envoys she usually worked with. There was no arrogance, no hunger for attention, no need to prove anything. He was simply doing what he believed was right. When the workers left, Arya stepped inside. Evan turned slightly, noticing movement. When he saw who had entered, he froze, not in fear, but in surprise. His eyes narrowed a little. Not with anger, but with caution. Your Majesty, he said politely, but without warmth. This is unexpected. Arya felt her throat tighten. Her voice almost disappeared, but she forced herself to speak. I came to talk to you, he nodded slowly. About what? She took a breath. It felt heavier than any she had taken before. I wronged you. Evan looked at her carefully. She continued, her voice softer now. I dismissed your help. I insulted your intentions, and my people are paying the price. Evan put down the tool in his hand. The grid is collapsing, isn't it? Arya lowered her eyes. Yes. Faster than we thought. Evan didn't react with satisfaction or anger. He didn't say, "I told you so." He simply waited for her to speak more. "I don't want to lose lives," Arya said. Her voice trembled slightly. "I don't want my people to suffer because of my pride. I know I treated you unfairly. I know I pushed you away." She looked up into his calm brown eyes. "But I am here now, asking for your help." Evan crossed his arms gently, thinking. "Why?" he asked finally. "Are you here for your empire? Or for yourself?" The question struck her like a bolt. For a moment, she couldn't answer. She had always made decisions for her empire. But now, when she stood in front of him, she realized the truth wasn't so simple. She swallowed. Both. Something softened in Evan's expression. It wasn't forgiveness, but understanding. He could see the sincerity in her eyes. He sighed lightly. "I'll help," he said. Her heart jumped with hope. "What condition?" "That you treat humans as equals," Evan said. "No more dismissing. No more insulting. No more acting as if we are lesser." Arya felt her breath catch. Not because the request was unreasonable, but because she realized how deeply she had hurt an entire species with her behavior. "I accept," she said without hesitation. "From this moment forward," Evan nodded slowly. "Then let's begin." He gathered his equipment and walked beside her toward her ship. As they traveled back to the Celestian capital, silence filled the cabin again. But it wasn't the cold silence from before. It was calm, thoughtful, heavy with the awareness that everything was changing. Arya watched him work during the flight. He studied the energy reports with intense focus. His fingers moved quickly across the controls, adjusting calculations, planning repairs, predicting failures. He seemed almost at peace when solving problems. Arya admired that. When they landed, the palace staff stared in shock. Queen Arya walked beside the human, without guards forcing him behind her. She treated him like an advisor, not a subject. In the command center, Evan got to work immediately. He explained the flaws in the system, how the grid was collapsing, and what they needed to do to prevent total destruction. Celestian engineers gathered around him, surprised by his calmness and clarity. He issued instructions, pointed to weak points, and sketched solutions on holograms. Arya stood close, listening carefully to every word. Hours passed. But Evan didn't slow down. He climbed onto unstable platforms, reached into dangerous machinery, and made fast adjustments. At one point, a loose energy cable exploded nearby. Arya gasped and took a step forward, but Evan waved off the concern. She realized something else about him. He wasn't fearless. He just chose courage over fear every time. As the work progressed, Arya found herself studying him quietly. She admired the way he stayed steady under pressure, the way he treated Celestian workers with respect, the way he risked himself for people who once judged him. By the time the first part of the grid stabilized, Arya realized her heart felt lighter. Having him near her felt strangely right. When the main stabilizer platform flickered dangerously again, Evan prepared to go inside. Arya held his arm for a moment without thinking. He turned, surprised. "Evan," she said softly. "Be careful." He nodded once. "I will." She watched him enter the dangerous zone, fear building inside her. When explosions lit the chamber, she nearly ran after him, but after long, tense minutes, Evan stepped out, burned, tired, but alive. The grid stabilized behind him. Arya felt her breath release in a long, trembling exhale. Her relief was so strong it almost felt like pain. Evan wiped sweat from his forehead. "One more day," he said. "Then your system will be safe." Arya nodded, trying not to show how deeply his safety mattered to her now. She knew something had changed. She didn't know how to name it yet, but she felt it growing inside her. She had found not just a savior for her empire, but someone she respected, someone whose presence brought her strength and clarity, someone who made her heart beat differently, and she wasn't ready to lose him again. The sky above the Celestian capital glowed with an uneasy shimmer as the final day of repairs began. Ships moved across the atmosphere like restless fireflies, carrying engineers, equipment, and emergency teams. The entire empire seemed to be holding its breath. One mistake, one unstable pulse, and the main star grid could collapse again. The pressure was enormous, but Evan Hale stood at the center of the command platform with calm determination. He checked every module, every cable, every signal, making sure nothing failed. Queen Arya stood near him, watching silently. She had been by his side throughout the night, refusing to rest until the crisis ended. Her advisors had tried to convince her to leave the dangerous area, but she refused. She wanted to see the repairs with her own eyes and stand beside the human who had chosen to help her after she had wronged him. Evan typed commands into the control panel while speaking to the engineers. Power readings are stabilizing. Keep pressure levels under 60. If they rise above that, the ring will overload again. One engineer nodded quickly. Understood. Human envoy. Adjusting energy flow now. Arya noticed how naturally the engineers now followed his instructions. Just days earlier, Celestians viewed humans as lesser beings. Now they relied on Evan's guidance more than anything else. It was rare for someone from another species to earn such trust so quickly. Arya felt a quiet pride watching him. She stepped closer, speaking softly so only he could hear. If this works today, Evan, our people will never forget what you've done. Evan didn't look up from the control screen. I'm not doing it for memory or praise. I'm doing it because it's right. Arya felt warmth stir in her chest. His simple words carried more meaning than he realized. She admired that he didn't care about attention or rewards. She admired that he kept his promises without expecting anything in return. She admired him more deeply than she had expected to. The platform suddenly shook as a powerful surge ran through the stabilizer ring. Lights flickered. Engineers stumbled. Arya grabbed the railing, her heart jumping. Evan immediately rushed to the main conduit. It's overheating again. The backup line didn't hold. A senior engineer hurried forward. We added reinforcement, but the heat is too strong. Evan scanned the readings, his jaw tightening. Someone needs to get inside the control chamber and reroute the pressure manually. If we don't do it now, the entire system could explode. Arya's eyes widened. The control chamber was the most dangerous area. Any wrong movement could destroy the chamber and everything around it. She quickly shook her head. Evan, send someone else. I cannot let you risk. He cut her off gently. I know what needs to be done. I'll go. Her breath caught. No, you can't. You already risked your life yesterday. It's my design, Evan said calmly. If anyone else goes in, they won't understand the circuit fast enough. Arya reached out and held his wrist without thinking. He paused, surprised. Her voice trembled slightly. You don't have to prove anything. You already saved us. Evan looked at her with soft eyes. This isn't about proving something. It's about finishing what we started. Arya's heart pressed painfully against her ribs. She wanted to stop him. She wanted to order her guards to hold him back. But she also knew he was right. Only he understood the stabilizer system perfectly. Only he could make the last correction. She slowly let go of his wrist, her fingers shaking. Come back to me, she whispered. Evan gave her a small nod before putting on the protective gear and entering the chamber. Arya stood frozen as the heavy doors closed behind him. A deep humming noise filled the platform as the machines inside activated. Through the reinforced glass, she could see flashes of light and sparks as Evan moved quickly between the circuits. Heat waves shimmered in the chamber, making everything look distorted. Minutes passed like hours. Engineers watched the monitors anxiously. Pressure levels spiked and dropped, then spiked again. Arya felt her breath shorten every time the alarms beeped. She couldn't take her eyes off the chamber. Each flash of light made her fear the worst. Inside, Evan worked with focus and speed. Sweat rolled down his face, but he ignored it. His hands moved precisely across the cables, adjusting connections and diverting energy. One wrong touch could end everything, but he stayed steady. Suddenly, a loud explosion erupted inside. Arya gasped, her body jerking forward. Smoke filled the glass for a moment. Engineers shouted. Alarms screamed. Evan! She cried, unable to hold back. Her voice echoed across the platform. Before she could run to the chamber, the smoke began to clear. A figure emerged, slowly stumbling. Exhausted but standing. It was Evan. Arya pressed her shaking hand to her mouth, relief flooding her whole body. Her knees weakened for a moment. She almost fell, but an advisor caught her arm. Her eyes never left Evan as he walked out through the opening doors, coughing but alive. He removed the helmet and took a deep breath. It's done, he said. The grid is stable. The command center erupted with cheers. Engineers hugged each other. Officers bowed their heads. Celestians shouted in relief and joy. For the first time in weeks, hope filled the air. Arya didn't wait for ceremony. She stepped forward quickly and stopped right in front of him. She didn't care who watched. She didn't care about royal manners or what the court expected of her. She looked into his tired eyes and felt her heart soften completely. Evan, she whispered, her voice shaking. You saved us. He smiled weakly. We saved them. Together. She stood close enough to feel the warmth of his breath. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The world around them faded into the background. It was just the two of them, one queen who had learned humility, and one human who had shown what true strength looked like. Arya reached up slowly and placed her hand on his cheek. Her thumb brushed a small burn mark near his jaw. Her eyes glistened. I misjudged you, she said softly. I misjudged your people, and myself. Evan didn't speak. He simply let her words settle gently between them. Arya continued, her voice trembling with emotion she had never revealed in public before. You walked away from me once, and I deserved it. But now, I hope you won't walk away again. Evan studied her expression, seeing sincerity, vulnerability, and something deeper, a feeling she could no longer hide. He swallowed softly. That depends, he said. Will you continue to judge humans? Or try to understand them? Arya lowered her eyes for a moment, then lifted them again, filled with quiet determination. I want to understand you. I want to understand all of you. Evan exhaled slowly. It wasn't an agreement, but it wasn't rejection either. It was the beginning of something new. Days passed, and reports confirmed that the Celestian grid was fully stable. The Empire celebrated Evan as a hero. But he didn't stay in the royal hall long. He preferred to work in the engineering bay, helping Celestian workers learn the stabilizer designs. Arya visited him often. At first, she came with questions about repairs. Then she came simply to watch him work. Eventually, she came because his presence eased her mind in ways she couldn't explain. One evening, Arya found him on the palace balcony, looking at the stars. She stepped beside him quietly. Thinking about leaving again? She asked softly. Evan shook his head. Not this time. Arya's heart warmed. The night breeze brushed gently across their faces. She looked at him with a small smile. Thank you for staying. Evan turned toward her. Thank you for changing. They stood together under the glowing sky, two souls from different worlds brought together not by fate, but by choices, hard, painful choices that led to understanding. Arya extended her hand slowly. Evan looked at it, then at her face, then took her hand gently. In that moment, a silent promise formed between them. A promise of partnership. A promise of respect. A promise of something deeper that neither needed to rush. The queen who once ignored him now valued him more than she valued her throne. The human who once walked away now walked beside her. The galaxy would remember many things. The stabilizer, the crisis, the restoration of the grid. But the greatest change was the quiet transformation in the heart of a queen and the unshakable courage of a human who taught an empire the meaning of true strength. And for the first time in her reign, Arya felt hopeful about the future, not because her empire was saved, but because Evan Hale was now a part of it.